The invitation smelled like vanilla icing and fresh ink, which was ridiculous, because paper should not have been able to smell like betrayal. It lay on my pillow in a cream envelope sealed with the Academy crest, my name written in gold calligraphy, so pretty it almost made me laugh. Livia Hart, Table 1, Guest of Honor. In my first life, I had held that same envelope against my chest and cried because after 3 years of being ignored, mocked, and quietly pushed out of every room that mattered, the farewell committee had finally decided to recognize me. I had believed the golden lettering meant forgiveness. I had believed the invitation meant the class wanted me there. I had believed that when Saraphene Bell smiled at me across the hallway and said, "You have to come tonight, Livia. It won't be the same without you." She was offering peace. Now I sat on the edge of my narrow dorm bed with the envelope between 2 fingers, listening to the rain strike the window, and understood that the sweetest invitations are sometimes just traps with ribbons tied around them. I did not gasp when I realized I had come back. I did not look in the mirror and touch my face like a tragic heroine in a cheap play. I remembered dying too clearly for drama. I remembered a ballroom spinning under chandeliers, remembered laughter turning sharp around me, remembered a glass cup slipping from my hand after the punch tasted strangely bitter beneath the sugar. I remembered waking in the nurse's room with my blouse stained, my phone missing, and a dean standing over me with disappointment already arranged on his face. They said I had ruined the farewell dinner. They said I had screamed at Saraphene, knocked over a table, and tried to set fire to the farewell banner with a candle. They said witnesses saw everything. They said the video was enough. They said my scholarship, recommendation letters, and early university offer would be frozen until the investigation ended. It never ended. Saraphene's father made sure of that. By winter, I was known as the unstable girl who could not handle being second best. By spring, I was dead behind the old auditorium after slipping on rain-wet steps while running from reporters who wanted me to cry on camera. By summer, Saraphene was giving interviews about compassion. In this life, the invitation arrived on the same afternoon, placed on my pillow by someone who had a key to my room and no respect for my privacy. My roommate Mina was at rehearsal, so it had not been her. The dorm matron never used envelopes. That left Saraphene's little circle of silk ribbon girls, the ones who moved through the academy like perfume through a closed room, invisible until you choked on them. I turned the envelope over and saw the tiny dent near the crest where a fingernail had pressed too hard. I knew that mark. Saraphene always wore pearl white nail polish and always pressed seals with her thumb as if she were blessing them. She thought small details were beneath ordinary people. She had never understood that people who are robbed by details learn to worship them. I slid the invitation into my desk drawer and took out the old black notebook I had used in my first life to write practice essays, grocery lists, and pathetic little reminders to keep trying. The first page was blank now. Of course it was. The universe had dragged my body back, not my evidence. No disciplinary file, no news clipping, no screenshot of Saraphene laughing in a private chat after my scholarship vanished. Just my memory, my shaking hands, and one night before the farewell dinner that had broken my life. I wrote the date at the top of the page. Then I wrote 3 sentences beneath it. Do not drink anything from the ballroom. Do not enter the ballroom after 8. Do not be alone where witnesses can be manufactured. The words looked simple, almost childish, but they calmed me in a way revenge fantasies never had. In my first life, I had tried to survive by proving I was innocent after everyone had already decided I was guilty. This time, I would survive by never stepping inside the story they had prepared for me. Saraphene found me in the library at 5. She always located people as if she had been born with a map of their weaknesses. I was sitting near the western windows with a stack of borrowed economics books open in front of me, pretending to revise while the academy transformed around us for the farewell dinner. From the courtyard below came the sound of hired staff unloading chairs, the squeak of wet wheels, and the occasional burst of laughter from students taking photographs beneath the lantern arch. Saraphene appeared beside my table in a pale blue dress that made her look like a winter saint, her blonde hair pinned with tiny silver stars, her smile soft enough to make strangers trust her with their last secret. Behind her stood Elodie and Faye, the loyal shadows who repeated her opinions before she finished forming them. "There you are," Saraphene said, lowering her voice because the librarian adored her. "Everyone has been looking for you." "Everyone?" I asked, turning a page I had not read. Her smile twitched. "A small thing. Beautifully small. Well, our table has. You are still coming, aren't you? The committee saved you a seat near the center. It would look strange if the guest of honor vanished." Guest of honor. In my first life, that phrase had warmed me like sunlight. I had spent so long outside their circles that even false inclusion felt like rescue. Now I heard the hook beneath it. If I skipped, I would look ungrateful. If I came, I would be placed exactly where cameras could catch me falling apart. I looked up at her and saw the patience in her eyes, the faint confidence of someone watching a fish swim toward bait. "I might be late," I said. "I have a headache." Elodie gave a delicate little gasp, as if illness before a school dinner were a moral failure. "But the toast is at 7:30. "The toast?" I asked. Saraphene placed one hand against her chest. "Didn't they tell you? Since you're leaving with the highest external assessment score, you're meant to receive the first cup. It's symbolic. You know, one final blessing for the future." Her voice wrapped itself around blessing like a ribbon around a knife. I remembered that toast. I remembered the cup being handed to me by a waiter who would later say he received it from the beverage table. I remembered Saraphene lifting her own glass and whispering, "To Livia, who finally learned how to shine." I remembered bitterness hiding under berries and sugar. I closed my notebook slowly, pressing my palm flat against the cover so she would not see my fingers shaking. "That's kind," I said. "But I may not be able to stay for the toast." The air changed. Not loudly. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Saraphene's smile remained, but her eyes sharpened. "You should stay. People prepared things for you." "I'm sure they did," I said. Faye leaned forward, her perfume powdery and suffocating. "Don't be dramatic, Livia. It's one dinner. You always act like people are plotting against you." I almost laughed. The old me would have denied it, defended myself, tried to prove I was reasonable. The new me had died with other people's reasonableness in my mouth like ash. I stood and gathered my books. "You're right," I said. "It's just one dinner." Saraphene watched me slide past her. "So you'll come?" I looked back from the end of the table. Of course. It was my second lie of the day, and like the first, it was useful. At 6, the dormitory smelled of hairspray, rain, and desperation. Girls moved between rooms half-dressed, asking for earrings, safety pins, lip gloss, shoes, forgiveness from mirrors. Mina burst into our room carrying 2 dresses, one black and one green, both wrinkled from being trapped under her arm. She stopped when she saw me sitting at my desk in plain trousers and an academy cardigan. "Why aren't you dressed?" she asked. Her voice carried no malice, only panic. Mina had been one of the few people in my first life who hesitated before condemning me. She had not saved me, but she had not lied either. When the disciplinary board asked whether she saw me drink the punch, she said yes. When they asked whether she saw me act strangely afterward, she said yes. When they asked whether she believed I would hurt anyone on purpose, she cried and said no. That small no had cost her Saraphene's friendship and gained me nothing, but I remembered it. "I'm not going," I said.
Mina blinked.
"You're joking."
"No."
"But your name is on the program. They printed it under the toast. Saraphene said the whole dinner was partly for you." "That is exactly why I'm not going." She lowered the dresses. "Livia, what happened?" For one wild second, I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to say that I had already lived this night, that she would find me half-conscious near the dessert table, that a phone would appear in my bag with messages I had never sent, that Saraphene would cry in the dean's arms as if I had tried to ruin her life instead of the other way around. But truth without proof is just madness wearing clean shoes. So I said the only thing I could. "Something is wrong with the dinner. I don't know how much yet, but I need you not to drink the punch." Mina stared at me, then at the green dress in her hand. "That sounds insane." "I know. Are you trying to scare me?"
"No."
I'm trying to keep one person from making the same mistake I made. The words slipped out too close to the bone. Mina's expression softened, and that was dangerous because softness makes people ask questions. I stood, took my coat from the chair, and handed her a sealed bottle of water from my desk. Take this. Keep it in your bag. Don't let anyone open it. Don't drink anything from a bowl or jug. If anyone asks, say your own medicine. If Saraphene insists you toast, pretend your stomach hurts and leave.
Mina svalde ved.
Where are you going? To return a library book, I said. At 6:30 on farewell night? Yes. She looked at me as if I had grown another head, but she took the water. That was enough. I could not save the whole academy, with one warning. I had learned in my first life that people who want to believe a golden girl will step over bodies to keep believing her. Mina might doubt me, might ignore me, might think I had finally cracked under pressure. But she took the bottle, and sometimes survival begins with the smallest obedience. I left the dorm through the laundry stairwell, not the main lobby. In my first life, the security camera near the lobby had shown me entering the farewell dinner at 7:06 p.m. wearing the silver dress my aunt bought on credit. That footage became part of the timeline used against me. This time, I wanted a different timeline. The laundry stairwell camera was broken and had been broken for 2 months because the administration only repaired things parents could see. I went down 3 flights, crossed the service courtyard under the rain, and entered the old science building through a side door that never latched properly. My shoes squeaked against the tiles. The corridors were dark except for the green emergency lights, and every sound I made seemed too alive. Somewhere across campus, music began inside the ballroom, a bright string arrangement floating through the wet evening like a promise made by liars. The old science building connected to the administrative annex through a staff passage used mostly by maintenance workers. In my first life, I had never noticed it. I had spent years walking through official doors like a well-trained student. After the scandal, when I was forced to attend meetings with the disciplinary office, I learned every side corridor by accident because reporters waited near the main entrances. Shame had mapped the academy for me.
Now I use that map.
I passed the locked chemistry prep room, the cracked trophy case, and the vending machine that always ate coins. At the end of the passage, a narrow staircase led down to the records basement, where the academy kept printed event logs, guest lists, and old security backups for 30 days before deleting them. I did not have a key to the records basement. I had something better: knowledge of a man who hated walking upstairs. Mr. Palace, the night facilities supervisor, had bad knees, a sweet tooth, and a habit of leaving his access card in the drawer of the reception desk while he made tea in the staff lounge. In my first life, during the investigation, I had watched him limp into the lounge every evening at 7 because the disciplinary office made me wait there before interviews. Nobody else noticed. Nobody notices ordinary men with bad knees until the doors they open become useful. At 6:58, I stood behind a pillar near reception and listened to his keys jingle, his kettle switch click, and his tired sigh as he lowered himself into a chair. At 7:02, I slipped behind the desk, opened the drawer, took the access card, and placed a wrapped lemon biscuit in its place because even in revenge, I did not like stealing without payment. The records basement smelled like dust, old toner, and cold metal. Rows of cabinets stood beneath buzzing lights. On the far wall, a small monitor showed the live camera grid: ballroom entrance, west corridor, kitchen loading door, courtyard arch, main staircase, beverage station. I stopped breathing when I saw the beverage station. 2 silver punch bowls sat under a garland of white flowers. A waiter in a black vest arranged cups in a crescent. Students drifted past laughing, their faces flushed with celebration. Near the far edge of the screen, Saraphene stood with her father, Dean Bell, her hand tucked elegantly through his arm. She looked radiant.
Of course she did.
Predators often look most beautiful before the bite. I found the external backup console beneath the monitor. It was older than most of the students and had a manual export function so primitive that even the administration had not bothered replacing it. In my first life, the board had shown selected clips: me drinking, me swaying, me arguing, me knocking over the table. They said full footage from the beverage station was unavailable because the camera had glitched between 7:12 and 7:29. Back then, I believed them because innocent people believe missing evidence is an accident. Now I knew better. I connected a blank drive I had bought from the campus store that afternoon, opened the camera archive, and began exporting everything from 6:30 onward. The progress bar crawled like an old insect. Above it, the live feed continued. At 7:14, Saraphene's father moved away to greet trustees. At 7:16, Elodie blocked the beverage station with her body while pretending to fix the flower garland. At 7:17, Faye dropped her silver clutch and crouched to pick it up, drawing the waiter's attention. At 7:18, Saraphene stepped behind the punch table. I leaned toward the monitor until my breath fogged the screen. She did not pour powder dramatically like a villain in a theater. Real malice is smaller and faster. Her hand disappeared beneath the tablecloth, came up holding something no larger than a folded napkin, and hovered over the left punch bowl for less than 2 seconds. The camera angle caught her wrist, the tilt of her fingers, the way she stirred afterward with the crystal ladle while smiling at a teacher across the room. Then she lifted one cup from that bowl and handed it to Elodie, who carried it toward table 1. My table. My empty chair. My printed name card waiting like a grave marker. My knees nearly gave out. Not because I was surprised, but because proof is heavier than suspicion. In my first life, the world had asked me to prove what I could only feel in my poisoned blood. Now the screen showed the shape of it. I watched Elodie reach my empty seat and freeze. She looked around. Faye joined her. Saraphene's head turned slowly. Even through grainy footage, I saw confusion crack her perfect expression. The toast was 10 minutes away. The guest of honor was gone. The basement door opened behind me. I turned so fast my shoulder struck the cabinet. Mr. Palace stood in the doorway holding his access card in one hand and the lemon biscuit in the other, his eyebrows raised like 2 gray question marks. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then he looked past me at the monitor, where Saraphene was leaning toward a waiter with a smile too tight to be innocent. Mr. Palace said, "That better be your flash drive." "It is," I whispered. "Are you stealing footage?" "I'm preserving it. That is a fancy word students use when they are stealing." I could have run. I could have lied. Instead, I stepped aside so he could see the beverage station clearly. Please watch the clip from 7:18. His face hardened before the replay finished. Facilities supervisors know buildings the way doctors know bodies. They know what belongs where, which gestures are normal, which doors should not open, which people move like they have permission, and which move like they have a secret. Mr. Palace watched Saraphene's hand disappear and reappear. Then he watched the live feed, where staff were beginning to gather near the punch bowls for the toast. His jaw shifted once. "Stay here," he said.
No.
His eyes snapped to mine. "If you go alone, Dean Bell will bury it," I said. "He buried it last time." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Mr. Palace did not ask what last time meant. Maybe he thought I meant another incident. Maybe he heard something in my voice that old men with bad knees and long memories understand. He took one step closer, lowered his voice, and said, "Who else knows?" "No one who can help." He stared at me for a long second, then reached over me and pressed a red button beneath the monitor. A phone on the wall lit up. "Security control," he said when someone answered. "Lock beverage service in Aurelia Hall. Nobody touches the punch bowls." "Yes, both." "No, I do not care if the dean is giving a toast. Call campus police and the duty nurse."
Now.
On the live feed, the waiter nearest the punch table touched his earpiece and froze. 2 security guards entered from the west corridor. Saraphene turned toward them, still smiling, but her shoulders stiffened. Dean Bell appeared beside her, irritation already rising on his face. The music continued for 6 absurd seconds while nobody in the ballroom understood that the evening had split open. Then one guard placed a hand over the left punch bowl, another moved students away from the cups, and the string quartet stopped mid-note. I should have felt triumph. Instead, I felt sick. There were students near that table. Some had already drunk from the right bowl, maybe from the left. In my first life, I had been the intended centerpiece, but what if others drank while waiting? Revenge is clean only in stories told by people who never had to smell fear in a crowded room. On the monitor, Mina stood near the back wall clutching the sealed water bottle I had given her. She looked pale. When Saraphene saw the bottle in Mina's hand, her face changed again. Not guilt. Calculation. "We need to go up," I said. Mr. Palace blocked the doorway. "You need to stay away from that hall. She'll blame me if I'm absent. She will blame you if you breathe." He was right, but being right did not fix the timeline. I had skipped the farewell dinner. That made me safe from the drink, but it also gave Saraphene a new story. She could claim I planted something before leaving. She could claim I staged the footage. She could claim jealousy, instability, obsession. Every word she used in my first life polished and ready. I looked at the monitor. Dean Bell was speaking sharply to the guards now. One of them shook his head. Saraphene had one hand over her mouth, playing shocked innocence for the nearest cluster of teachers. Elodie was crying already, which meant she had chosen her role. Faye kept looking toward the corridor, probably searching for me. "I need to be seen somewhere else," I said. "Somewhere recorded."
Somewhere impossible.
Mr. Palace frowned. Impossible for what? For touching the punch. He understood then. His eyes moved from me to the timestamp on the archive. "Where were you at 7:18? "In this basement, exporting footage. With my stolen access card. Borrowed." "Student, this is not the moment for cute words." Despite everything, I almost smiled. He pulled a chair from the corner and pointed at it.
"Seat.
Face the camera." "What camera?" He nodded toward the ceiling. Above the records cabinets, half hidden by a dust-coated vent, a tiny black dome watched the room. "Basement has its own camera."
No audio, but it has time.
"You came in at 7:04, yes." "Yes." "Then stay until campus police arrive. Do not move. Do not touch anything else. Do not make yourself interesting." It was the best advice anyone had given me in 2 lives.
You said.
Mr. Palace stood beside the monitor with his arms folded, guarding me like a cranky old statue, while the ballroom dissolved into chaos upstairs. The export completed. He removed the drive himself, labeled it with a marker, and sealed it in an evidence envelope from the security drawer. On the live feed, campus police arrived at 7:31. The duty nurse examined the cups. A woman from the catering company pointed toward the storage corridor, speaking fast. Saraphene's father kept trying to step between his daughter and the guards, his face dark with authority that was beginning to fail him. That, more than anything, felt unreal. In my first life, Dean Bell's authority had been a wall. Tonight, for the first time, I watched strangers push through it. At 7:42, the basement door opened again. 2 campus police officers entered with a woman in a charcoal suit I recognized immediately. Deputy Headmistress Rowe, the only administrator in my first life who had asked why the full footage was missing. She had asked once, quietly, in a meeting where Dean Bell smiled and said technology was unreliable. Then she was transferred to another campus before the term ended. Now she looked at me, at Mr. Palace, at the sealed drive, and seemed to understand that the night had become larger than a ruined dinner. "Miss Hart," she said, "why are you in the records basement?" "Because I knew something would happen at the farewell dinner," I said. One officer lifted his brows. Rowe did not.
How?
I looked down at my hands. There are truths that sound like lies, and lies that save your life. I chose the one that could survive daylight. Saraphene Bell insisted I drink from the ceremonial punch tonight. She told me I had to stay for the toast. In the past week, people close to her kept asking whether I had allergies, whether I took medication, whether I got dizzy when nervous. My room was entered without permission, and the invitation was left on my pillow. I felt unsafe, so I came here to see whether the beverage station was being recorded. It was not the whole truth. It was enough truth. Rowe's eyes narrowed. You accessed restricted security equipment because you felt unsafe? Yes. That is a serious violation. I know. Why not report your concerns? I almost laughed again, but it would have sounded wrong. To whom? Her father? Silence settled hard. Mr. Palace cleared his throat. She should not have been down here, deputy. But if she had not been, we would not have the footage. Bell girl is on camera tampering with the left bowl. Rose's face changed by almost nothing, which told me everything. She had suspected something about the bells for longer than tonight. She took the evidence envelope, signed across the seal, and handed it to the officer. Miss Hart, you will remain under staff supervision until this is resolved. You are not accused of tampering at this time, but you did breach a secure area. Do you understand? Yes.
Good.
Then come with me. You should hear what is being alleged before it grows teeth. We did not enter the ballroom through the main doors. Roe led me through the service corridor behind the stage, past crates of folded linen, and a florist crying into her phone. The nearer we came, the louder the ballroom became, chairs scraping, students whispering, teachers telling people to stay calm in voices that made calm impossible. At the edge of the curtain, Rose stopped and held up one hand. Through a gap, I saw the scene my absence had created. The chandeliers blazed over a room frozen between celebration and scandal. The punch table was taped off. Campus police stood beside the catering supervisor. Students clustered around tables, phones half hidden in laps. Saraphene sat near the center with Elodie and Faye on either side, her face pale but composed, her father standing behind her like a shield carved from anger. She did this, Dean Bell was saying. His voice carried beautifully, trained by years of assemblies and punishments. Livia Hart has resented my daughter all year. She refused to attend tonight after making several disturbing comments. She had access to the hall during rehearsal. If something was placed in the punch, we need to ask who benefited from creating this spectacle. There it was. The old story wearing new shoes. I had skipped the dinner, and he had already fitted my absence into the accusation. In my first life, they said I caused chaos because I drank. In this life, they said I caused chaos because I did not. Some people do not need evidence. They only need a girl alone enough to carry blame.
Roe looked at me.
Ready? No, I said honestly. Good. Innocent people who are ready for public accusations worry me. Then she stepped through the curtain with me beside her. The ballroom turned. 200 faces swung toward me. I felt the old terror rise in my throat, hot and familiar, but this time it found nowhere to land. I had not drunk from their bowl. I had not stood near their table. I had not entered their hall. I had a basement camera, a sealed drive, a supervisor witness, and one sealed water bottle in Mina's shaking hand across the room. Saraphene saw me and began to cry. It was immediate, perfect, and almost impressive. Tears gathered without smudging her mascara. Her lips trembled. Her father placed a hand on her shoulder. There, he said, pointing at me. Ask her where she was. Rose's voice cut through the room. We know where she was. Dean Bell frowned. Excuse me? Miss Hart was on basement camera from 7:04 onward, Rose said. The footage from the beverage station shows the suspected tampering occurred at approximately 7:18. She was not in Aurelia Hall. The room inhaled. Saraphene's tears paused. Only for a second, but I saw it. So did Mina. So did Roe. Dean Bell recovered faster. Then she had an accomplice.
Possibly, Rose said.
Which is why no one is leaving until statements are taken. Elodie sobbed louder. Faye whispered something to Saraphene. I watched Saraphene's hand move under the table toward her clutch. Rose saw it too. Miss Bell, she said, please place your bag on the table. Saraphene looked up as if slapped.
What?
Your bag. Dean Bell stepped forward. Deputy Rowe, you are not searching my daughter in front of the student body.
No, Rose said.
Campus police are. The first real crack appeared then. Not in Saraphene's face, but in the room's belief. Students who had adored her all year began shifting in their seats. Teachers looked at each other. The catering supervisor folded her arms. One campus officer approached the table.
Saraphene klotzte her back.
This is humiliating, she whispered. So, was being accused of poisoning a dinner I skipped, I said. My voice was not loud, but it reached. It reached because the room wanted it to. Saraphene looked at me, and for one moment the saint vanished. Hatred flashed across her face, raw and ugly. Then she lowered her eyes and placed the clutch on the table. The officer opened it. Inside were lipstick, tissues, a compact mirror, a folded program, 2 breath mints, and a small empty paper sleeve tucked into the lining. The officer did not announce what it was. He did not need to. The nurse stepped forward, gloved hands ready. Saraphene began shaking her head. That isn't mine. Dean Bell's voice dropped. Do not answer. But panic makes people disobedient. It isn't mine, Saraphene repeated. Livia put it there. A strange calm passed through me. In my first life, accusations had felt like stones thrown too fast to dodge. Now this one landed at my feet and showed everyone its own shape.
How?
I asked. She blinked. How did I put it there? I said. I did not come to the dinner. I was in the basement before the punch was touched. Your bag was with you on camera at the table. So, how exactly did I put anything inside it? Saraphene opened her mouth. Nothing came out. For 3 years, she had won every argument because people filled silence for her. A teacher would soften it, her father would redirect it, Elodie would cry inside it. Tonight, silence was a cage. Then Mina stood. The movement startled everyone, including me. She held up the sealed water bottle. Saraphene told me to get Livia from the dorm, she said, voice trembling but clear. At 6:40. She said Livia was acting unstable and might embarrass everyone. When I said Livia wasn't coming, Saraphene asked whether she had already drunk anything. I thought it was weird, but I didn't understand. Livia told me not to drink the punch. That's why I didn't. Saraphene turned on her. Mina, don't be stupid. The word stupid did what evidence sometimes cannot. It reminded people that golden girls are only kind while winning. Mina flinched, then lifted her chin. You also asked me last week if Livia had any medical conditions that made her faint. Elodie wiped her face with both hands. She said it was for the emergency contact sheet. Faye whispered, Saraphene. Dean Bell snapped. Enough. These are frightened children inventing patterns. Then let the police sort the patterns, Rose said. The city police arrived at 8:06. Not campus security. Not teachers with clipboards. Real officers in dark raincoats, bringing cold air and adult consequences into Aurelia Hall. Students who had been recording lowered their phones. Dean Bell made a call that no one answered. The nurse took samples from both punch bowls. The catering supervisor surrendered the service logs. Mr. Palace appeared with another envelope containing the basement camera export and the access card record. I stood near the stage with Ro beside me, feeling less like a person than a candle that had burned too long. When one officer asked me for a statement, my voice shook at first, then steadied as I described Saraphene's insistence, the invitation left in my room, the ceremonial toast, my fear, my decision to avoid the hall, and my unauthorized access to the security room. I did not pretend I had followed rules. Innocence is not the same as obedience. I had learned that too late once. Saraphene was not let out immediately. That is another lie stories tell. In real life, consequences do not always arrive with perfect timing. First came questions, denials, whispered phone calls, her father's outrage, Elodie's sobbing confession that she had blocked the beverage station because Saraphene told her to distract the waiter, though she claimed she did not know why. Then came the catering assistant who said Saraphene had asked which bowl would be used for the guest of honor toast. Then came a student video from across the room, blurry but angled differently from the security camera, showing Saraphene's hand near the bowl at the exact moment Elodie and Faye created distractions. Each piece alone might have been explained away. Together, they formed a door closing. At 9:13, an officer asked Saraphene to stand. Her father stepped in front of her, face red, voice low. You are making a mistake that will cost this institution dearly. The officer did not raise his voice. Sir, step aside. For the first time in my life, Dean Bell was treated like an obstacle instead of a law. He looked around the ballroom, searching for support, but trustees avoided his eyes. Teachers stared at the floor. Students watched with the stunned hunger of people seeing a myth bleed. Saraphene stood slowly, her blue dress shimmering under the chandeliers. She looked impossibly young for a second, and I hated that my heart noticed. Then she turned her face toward me and mouthed four words with no sound at all. "This is your fault." Maybe it was. Maybe my refusal to attend had forced her plan into the open. Maybe my theft of footage had made it impossible for her father to erase the angle that mattered. Maybe my survival was a kind of violence against everyone who had built comfort on my silence. I looked back at her and did not apologize. They led her out through the center aisle, not in a dramatic struggle, not with screaming, but with one officer on each side and her wrists held carefully behind her. The metal cuffs flashed once beneath the chandelier. That flash traveled through the room like lightning. Elodie cried into her napkin. Faye covered her mouth. Dean Bell followed, shouting about lawyers, about defamation, about procedure. His voice faded down the corridor. The ballroom remained frozen around the empty space Saraphene left behind. I thought I would feel joy when it happened. I had imagined it in my first life during sleepless nights, imagined her exposed, humiliated, dragged down by the truth she buried me under. But when the doors closed behind her, what I felt first was exhaustion so deep it seemed older than my body. Then anger. Not hot anger. Clean anger. The kind that does not need to scream because it has finally been heard. Ro walked to the microphone at the front of the hall. She tapped it once, and the speakers groaned. "Students," she said, "the farewell dinner is concluded. You will remain seated until staff dismiss you by table. Anyone with video recordings of the beverage station, the punch service, or interactions involving Miss Bell, Miss Hart, or the committee must preserve them. Deleting relevant recordings may interfere with an active investigation. Medical staff will remain available for anyone who consumed beverages from the service table. Parents will be contacted. Further instructions will be issued by morning." A hand rose from table 3. "What about graduation?" a boy asked, because teenagers can watch a crime unfold and still worry about ceremony tickets. Ro looked at him for a long second. "Graduation will continue for eligible students." Eligible. The word landed beautifully. In my first life, they had used it to exclude me. Tonight, it turned towards Saraphene. Mina reached me after the tables began to empty. She did not hug me. I was grateful. Hugs can feel like cages after betrayal. She stopped an arm's length away, still holding the sealed water bottle, her face blotchy from crying. "You knew," she whispered. "I suspected," I said.
No.
"You knew." I looked at her and saw the edge of understanding there, not of rebirth, but of fear. She had been close enough to the trap to smell it. I knew enough to leave. Her eyes filled again. "I almost drank it. Elodie brought me a cup because you weren't there. She said we should toast without you." My stomach turned. "Did you?"
No.
"I remembered what you said." "I said I was on medicine." Saraphene looked at me like, Mina swallowed. Like she hated me for surviving something I didn't even understand. That was Saraphene. She did not only hate enemies. She hated variables. The next morning, the academy tried to become normal and failed spectacularly. Rain washed the courtyard clean, but no one walked through it the same way. Students gathered in corners, whispering over phones. Teachers moved with tight faces. The farewell banner still hung over Aurelia Hall, but one side had come loose overnight and sagged like a defeated flag. At 8:30, an emergency assembly was called. We sat in rows while Deputy Rose stood at the podium instead of Dean Bell. His absence roared louder than any announcement. Behind her sat the board chair, 2 trustees, the school nurse, and a woman from the City Education Authority. Saraphene's chair in the front row remained empty. Ro did not give details. Schools hate details when details make them look negligent. She said an incident had occurred involving suspected tampering with refreshments at the farewell dinner. She said law enforcement had been notified and was conducting an investigation. She said Dean Bell was on administrative leave pending review of his handling of the matter. At that, the hall erupted. Not loudly, but in a wave of breath, whispers, chair creaks, disbelief. Dean Bell had run the academy like a kingdom. Hearing that the king could be placed on leave made every student sit differently. Then Rose said my name. I felt every head turn before I lifted mine. Miss Livia Hart, she said, is not under disciplinary action in relation to last night's incident. She provided information that helped prevent further harm. Her unauthorized access to restricted security equipment remains under review, but the board acknowledges the extraordinary circumstances and the preservation of critical evidence. Under review. Not praised, not forgiven, not punished. It was an administrator's compromise, and I accepted it because living people can survive compromise. Dead girls cannot. After assembly, Saraphene's friends scattered like dropped beads. Elodie's parents collected her before lunch. Faye sat outside the counselor's office with red eyes and no makeup, staring at her shoes. Mina stayed beside me without speaking, which was the only kind of loyalty I could bear. By noon, every version of the story had already mutated. Some said Saraphene had only planned a prank. Some said she meant to make me faint, so I would miss graduation. Some said she was framed by her father's enemies. Some said I had orchestrated the whole thing because I was secretly brilliant and terrifying. That last rumor bothered me less than it should have. A girl has to take what mythology she can get. At 2, Ro called me into her office. I expected a warning. Instead, she closed the door, placed a cup of tea in front of me, and sat without touching her own. The police found messages, she said. My hand tightened around the cup. Between Miss Bell, Miss Arden, and Miss Vale, she continued, meaning Elodie and Faye. They appear to discuss isolating you, ensuring you consumed the ceremonial drink, and creating a recording afterward to support claims of erratic behavior. There are also messages referencing your scholarship and university recommendation. The room tilted softly. In my first life, those messages had either been deleted or ignored. Hearing them named made my old pain feel suddenly visible, like bruises under ultraviolet light. So she wanted my scholarship. Ro's mouth thinned. It appears she wanted you removed from contention before final endorsement letters were submitted. And her father? That is not something I can discuss. Which meant yes, or close enough to yes, that lawyers were already sharpening knives. Ro leaned back. For the first time, she looked tired. Miss Hart, I need to ask you something carefully. Was last night the first time you felt unsafe around Miss Bell?
No.
It was the last time. But I could not say that. So I told her about the smaller things. My assignments disappearing then reappearing in Saraphene's circle, rumors about my mental health, invitations that turned into humiliations, teachers suddenly questioning my honesty after private meetings with Dean Bell, the way scholarship information reached Saraphene before it reached me. I spoke until my throat hurt. Ro took notes. She did not interrupt. When I finished, she said, "You should have been able to report this earlier." I smiled without humor. To whom? She closed her notebook.
Yes.
That is the problem. By Friday, the Academy sent an official letter to all families. Saraphene Bell had been suspended pending expulsion proceedings. Dean Bell had resigned from active duties pending external investigation, though everyone knew resigned was a polite word placed over forced out like a napkin over broken glass. The farewell committee was dissolved. The scholarship endorsement process was frozen and reassigned to an independent panel. Students who participated in harassment, false statements, or evidence suppression would face separate disciplinary review. The letter used clean language. It did not say cuffs. It did not say drugged punch. It did not say that the golden girl cried in a police station while her father discovered power has limits when evidence is sealed before he can touch it. But everyone knew enough. On graduation morning, the sky cleared for the first time all week. I stood in the dorm bathroom, wearing a simple white dress with sleeves that covered the bruise-colored memories only I could see. Mina pinned my hair back, because my hands would not stop shaking.
You don't have to go, she said.
Yes, I said.
Ido.
The auditorium smelled of flowers and floor polish. Parents filled the back rows. Teachers lined the walls with careful expressions. Saraphene's reserved family seats were empty. Dean Bell's name had been removed from the program so clumsily that the spacing looked wounded. When my name was called for the External Excellence Award, the applause began politely, then grew. Not thunderous. Not cinematic. Real applause is messier than that, uneven and uncertain, but it filled the hall all the same. I walked across the stage and accepted the certificate from Deputy Rowe. For a second, under the lights, I saw another version of myself. The girl from my first life, stumbling through accusation, begging people to believe she had not done what they said. I wanted to reach for her. I wanted to tell her that the world had not been fair, but she had not been wrong. Instead, I held the certificate tighter. Rowe leaned close as we posed for the photograph. "Congratulations, Miss Hart," she murmured. "Thank you. And next time you believe a crime is about to occur, report it before breaking into my records basement." I looked at her. She was almost smiling. "I'll try." "That is not a yes." "No, ma'am." For the first time in 2 lives, I laughed on a stage without fear. After graduation, I walked alone to the old auditorium steps where I had died in the rain. They were dry now, sunlit, ordinary. A ribbon from someone's bouquet had blown against the railing and tangled there, pale blue, like Saraphene's farewell dress. I stood on the top step and looked down at the place where my first life ended. There was no blood, no ghost, no mark left by the girl who had fallen there while cameras chased her.
The world is cruel that way.
It erases suffering quickly unless someone forces it to keep records. I took the farewell invitation from my bag. I had carried it all week, folded inside my notebook, the gold lettering still bright. Livia Hart, Table 1, Guest of Honor. In my first life, it had been the doorway to ruin. In this one, it was evidence of a plan that failed because I learned the difference between being invited and being hunted. I tore it once, then again, letting the pieces fall into the bin beside the steps.
No ceremony. No speech.
No dramatic vow beneath the sky. Just paper becoming trash. Mina found me there a few minutes later. She did not ask what I was thinking. She only stood beside me and held out a sealed bottle of water. I stared at it, then at her. "Too soon?" she asked. This time, my laugh did not shake. "Maybe." She smiled. "Keep it anyway." I took the bottle. Across the courtyard, students were taking photographs beneath the arch, their gowns flapping in the breeze, their futures still messy and unpromised. I had lost one life to a cup of punch, a staged video, and a room full of people eager to believe the prettiest liar. I had regained another by skipping the dinner everyone said I had to attend. That was the lesson I carried with me when I left Ashbourne Academy for the last time. Sometimes survival does not look brave. Sometimes it looks rude, ungrateful, suspicious, lonely. Sometimes the most powerful thing a girl can do is decline the cup, leave the room, save the footage, and let the golden girl explain why her fingerprints are all over the bowl. And when the world asks why you were not where the trap expected you to be, smile gently and tell the truth. You had other plans.